So, welcome again to those of you at mochurch.tv. If you have a Bible app, which you can download for free, go to Mark chapter 1, and we'll be there in just a little bit. So, I'm a nerd. Some of you know that already. You're like, I can look at you. But I'm a nerd for all things space especially. It's one of the things I love. I love scripture and, different things like that, church history. But space blows my mind, like outer space. And so I love looking at the stars at night, especially on a summer night. I love talking about space, reading about space, watching TED Talks about space, talking with my kids at the dinner table or in our minivan about space. And they'll tell me things they learned at school. I'll be like, what? And they'll be like, I know. And so I love that stuff, even with my kids, just learning from them about what they've learned. And so curiosity led me one day to discover something some of you may have heard of called SETI. And SETI is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And it's a not-for-profit research organization. And the scientists at SETI have been listening to signals from outer space since the mid-1980s. And they've been listening for anything out there, hoping that someone or something might be trying to reach us. And so they have these dishes set up, and they just listen. It's like, that's an easy job. Just listening. And so they just listen. And so there's a lady named Dr. Jill Tarter, who's an American astronomer, specifically an American radio astronomer. And she co-founded SETI. But in one of her TED Talks, Jill Tarter asks, are we alone in this vast universe? Is it really just us? What if out there others are asking the similar questions? What if they look up at the night sky, at the same stars, but from the opposite side? Tarter clarifies, SETI doesn't presume the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. It merely notes the possibility, if not the probability, she says, in this vast universe. Now, one of the podcasts that kind of on and off I listen to is NPR's TED Radio Hour, and there's a great episode called Peering into Space, where their past host, Guy Raz, interviews Jill Tarter. And Guy Raz asks this question. He says, what if some kinds of intelligent life have actually been sending us signals? Like we're receiving them, but we just don't have the technology to detect those signals. Is that possible that we're looking for the wrong thing? And Jill Tarter says, oh yeah, unfortunately, that's absolutely possible. Suppose they're sending us zeta rays. Well, we don't know what zeta rays are. That's not a thing that we know of. She says, so perhaps there's some physics we don't yet understand or technology we haven't yet invented. That is absolutely perfect for interstellar communication, but we're just too primitive to know about it yet. She says, even our nearest star, the sun, and she's talking about traveling like light speed here, she said it takes a full 8 minutes for its radiation to reach us. And the nearest star beyond that is 4.2 light years away, which means it takes 4.2 years, for its light to get to us. And the edge of our galaxy is 75,000 light years away. And the nearest galaxy to us is 2.5 million light years. That means any signal that we detect would have started its journey a long time ago. And a signal would give us a glimpse of their past, not their present. Now, partly I'm a nerd, but also I'm kind of a nerd for fiction stuff. And I was like, that means when Star Wars says, this is in a galaxy a long time ago, far, far away, like, whoa, it's in the past a long time ago. Like maybe right now, if we listen carefully, suddenly at this moment in time, we'll hear, it's a trap. It's just like right now, like, oh, it just got to us because it happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Perfect timing. So Guy Raz says, back to real life, Guy Raz says, but I mean, we've been sending signals out there to them for a long time, right? And this is the part that my mind latched onto. Jill Tarter says this, yeah, radio broadcasts, television leakage, radars, these kinds of signals have been leaving the planet unintentionally for 100 years now, roughly. So there's a noise bubble with Earth at its center that is getting bigger. 1 light year every year, it grows in its radius. Now, picture this. Here's Earth just bumping. I mean, all kinds of noise, just bumping. Radio signals and television leakage and radars being sent out. Planet Earth is like that loud neighbor who won't turn down their music on a summer night. Like, oh, great, it's summer again. It's them. Boom, boom, boom. You know, it's going on. And so we're at the center of this noise bubble. We create a noise bubble that just keeps expanding larger and larger and larger year after year after year. And it's been going on for, roughly 100 years now as far as broadcasting goes. Now, in Mark chapter 1, Jesus and his disciples are in a little town called Capernaum. I've been there. I've seen the excavated town. It's on the northwest tip of the Sea of Galilee, which is really just a lake. But this lake called Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, and it's really kind of a little fishing village back in the first century. It's right there on the edge. There's a house that traditionally people for centuries have said that's where Simon Peter lived, the spokesperson for the 12 disciples. That's where he lived. And the crazy thing is, it's right on the edge of the lake. And you're like, whoa, Peter kind of had like a fishing business. That kind of makes a whole lot of sense from what the scriptures tell us. He was a fisherman. His brother Andrew was a fisherman. There's 2 other disciples named James and John who worked with them, seems to be. They were all fishermen. And so there's this little fishing village, and it's this town called Capernaum. And Capernaum kind of became Jesus' home base for ministry. 90% of Jesus' ministry happened like within a few miles of Capernaum and around the edge of this lake. 90% of what we know of Jesus' ministry was around there. So his home base is in Capernaum. It seems like maybe he stayed with Simon Peter and Simon Peter's wife. The supposed first pope had a wife? Yes, he did. And he had a mother-in-law. Yeah, she's living in the house too. You know how it goes. And so this is all going down in Capernaum. Well, in this chapter, leading up to what I'm about to read, Jesus publicly casts an evil spirit out of a man who was at the synagogue. Yes, the devil shows up at church. I can testify to that crap. Okay, so this guy in the synagogue is demon-possessed. Jesus casts out this demon. Then, when this synagogue worship service is over, Jesus goes to the home of Simon Peter, and he heals Simon Peter's mother-in-law, who is bedridden with a fever. And then this is where we pick up. Now, the timing of these things are happening right after each other in this section. Not everything is chronological through the Gospels, but this section is. In Mark 1, it says, that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. This is kind of an example of where we get this idea of Jesus as the great physician. This is one of those ways we kind of give him that nickname. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, the next day, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions, notice what they're called right there. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. Like, what are you doing out here? Jesus replied, let's go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. This is why I've come. So the timing here is interesting because local synagogue, that means the timing here is the Jewish Sabbath, which is their day of rest and worship. So goes to the synagogue, heals a man, of an evil spirit, casts that evil spirit out. Then he goes to Simon Peter's house. He heals Simon Peter's mother-in-law. Then at sunset, that's very important. That means in Jewish timeline, the Sabbath is now over. It went from sunset to sunset for the Sabbath. Sunset ends. And there were all these man-made rules about what it constitutes to work on the day of rest, things that you can't do. And humans define that by even how far you could travel. And so at sunset, people begin to show up where Jesus is at. Some probably traveled from out of town. And all of a sudden at sunset, people start lining up at Simon Peter's house to be healed or delivered by Jesus. And so a line rolls up, and Jesus spends the time starting at sunset healing people. And it says the next morning, very early, while it's still dark, Jesus didn't get much sleep, did he? This line started at sunset. It's evening when he starts, but yet probably getting to bed very late after being the great physician for so many people, he still gets up with this early morning, almost like an appointment he has in his daytimer. He didn't have an iPhone back then. He just had a daytimer, like spiral. And so, it's like he has an appointment with the Father. It's like, I'm going to get up. I went to bed late last night, but I got to meet with the Father. And he gets up and he goes to a solitary place while it's still dark. Probably didn't have much sleep. And he wanted to get to a secluded place away from the crowds and away from the disciples. Like he wanted to be away from this crazy species called humans. He wanted to be away from all of them. And he moves to a solitary place. And this was originally written in Greek, and the tense of the Greek word he prayed is an imperfect tense, just suggesting a prolonged period of prayer. He's going to get away and to spend time with the Father. Well, eventually, it says these dudes come to look for him. And the original word there isn't just like a normal go look for him. It really has this connotation, usually when it's used, to pursue with hostile intent, to go after, to hunt. Like, dude, I'm looking for Jesus. About to take control of Jesus. Like, where's Jesus at? Jesus, where you at? Like, they go after Jesus. And so they go to track down Jesus. And one scholar says, I think that the reason that it's called Simon and his companions, Simon Peter, then not the disciples went looking for him, is because they weren't acting much like disciples right now. They go out there, Jesus, what are you doing? People are back there. What are you thinking going off by yourself? Like, man, you at least use the buddy system. Come on, we're in the wilderness here, And so they go out there. They're not acting much like his followers, his apprentices, people learning from him and why he might be doing this. So they wanted Jesus to take advantage of his growing popularity. He's performed miracles back here. Why would you walk away from that? These guys are voters. There's more voters to heal. Like, they could vote you king, man. They could make you the next ruler. And that's what they're expecting, actually. Like the Jews, when they were waiting for the promised, prophesied Messiah, anointed one, or Christ in Greek, what they expected was, God is going to send us this prophesied person, but he's going to be a political leader. And in that context, exactly at that time in the first century, they were like, oh, if he shows up, he's going to kick some major booty, and he is going to free us from the Roman Empire. They were under the rule of the Romans. Okay, if the Messiah showed up right now, oh, he would come swinging an axe, man. I mean, this guy is going to be a leader that's going to be like a soldier warrior king. I mean, he will kick butt for us. So that's what they're expecting. So they're like, man, your popularity is growing. Let's keep it going, Messiah. Let's do this thing, Messiah. And so Jesus withdraws, and the disciples don't understand why he would withdraw from people among whom his popularity is growing. And what it really appears is that the people of Capernaum really weren't interested in Jesus beyond his ability to take care of their needs, to heal their sicknesses, to cast out their evil spirits. Like, really, their response to Jesus was shallow and superficial. That's what they wanted Jesus for. And so Jesus, knowing his primary mission was not to be a miracle worker, he senses that. He knows that. And he goes off, spends some time alone, and he knows my job here is secondarily to spiritually instruct people. Yes, secondarily. And number one, it's to come and be a suffering Messiah who will lay down his life for the people. And the disciples just don't understand that. Now, another interesting little side note that plays into this picture is in John chapter 6. Another one of the gospel writers, John, one of the fishermen, he says this at a different point in Jesus' ministry. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, speaking of the crowds, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Now, Jesus has just fed a bunch of people, and that'll make you popular, okay? He fed a bunch of people, and they're like, all right, this is the dude. It's the Messiah. Free appetizers. Now he's going to raise us up. We're going to fight, kick the Romans' butt. We're going to be free. And Jesus, knowing this, is like, man, these humans again. I'm just going to need some time with the Father. It's my daytimer for 6 a.m. He goes to a solitary place, and he withdraws again by himself. And I'm so thankful for that insight, just slipped in there only by the disciple John who wrote this. that actually one time he slipped away because they wanted to make him king. And I love that because I think solitude is such an incredible way to deal with the problem of popularity, with the problem of pressure of people who want you to be or do something that God isn't intending for your life. You know, just to deal with the pressures or the people pleasing that maybe your temperament is prone to. Say, man, solitude, that is like, it's like the medicine, solitude with the Father to get away from the crowds. Like, man, my friends want me to do this. Man, I'm feeling the pressure from my parents that they want me to be in this career. Man, I'm feeling the pressure from my boyfriend or girlfriend that they aren't really thrilled about the spiritual steps that I'm taking to grow in my relationship with God. Solitude with the Father. Like, man, I have to withdraw. Like, I have to refocus. Like, that is not my primary mission in life. But I'm tempted to please. Maybe I'm tempted, by the pressure. Or I'm tempted to just get confused. What is my mission? And I need to hear the mission from the Father again. And so solitude can help you and me reset when we start needing to battle that selfish ambition that maybe is rising up within us, or the temptation to chase things that we're hearing from other voices that aren't God's mission for us. I had a friend once, a Christian friend, who struggled with the problem of being a people pleaser. He knew that. I saw that in him. He was a major people pleaser. It was really hard for him to say no, to anybody. And one time he eventually read a book by a guy named Henry Nouwen. He has a book called The Way of the Heart. And he's an old Catholic leader. And he wrote this: solitude is the furnace of transformation. Solitude is the furnace of transformation. He writes, without solitude, we remain victims of our society and continue to be entangled in the illusion of the false self. Who you really aren't is who you might be tempted to be. And Jesus, he says, himself entered into that furnace. Jesus went into that solitude, and he went into that solitude because he knew he needed it, and he needed also the disciples to see that they needed it, and yet they come looking for him. What are you doing out here? Idiot. Why would you come out here? Simon and his companions. So you get out to solitude where there's no music, no podcasts, there's no book to read, there's no person to talk to, there's no project to finish, there's no phone calls to make. Then you can hear other important things that you usually couldn't hear with all the people and noises and broadcasts around you. In a different book, the same writer, Henry Nouwen, writes in Life of the Beloved. He wrote this, I read this book. He said, it's not easy to enter into silence or reach beyond the many boisterous and demanding voices of our world and to discover there the small, intimate voice saying, you are my beloved child. On you, my favor rests. Like, you just can't hear the Father saying that sometimes amidst all the noise. So Dr. Jill Tarter says we live in the middle of this noise bubble. And this noise bubble called the planet Earth, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, 1 light year at a time. It grows in its radius. And we all know that. It's really good to be reminded of that. But we live at the center of a noise bubble. We live at the center of a noise bubble. Like, just think about that. Picture that. Like, we exist in the middle of this vortex that's just boom, 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 all this stuff constantly going on. Like, in our world, our culture, our lives are filled with noise. And some of you and some of us we don't like that, but that's where we live. And so let me give you an example. Can you imagine living in a world where your mind is exposed to 500 advertisements per day? Just try to picture that for a second. 500 messages, mottos, slogans, signs, pictures, whatever, a day in advertising. Okay, that was the average in the 1970s. Today, it's more like 5,000 a day. So picture that now. Like, whoa. Like, there's just, it's crazy when you think about the amount of messages being thrown at us. The constant slogans and mottos and sound bites. So today, our mind are exposed to this marketing blitz. It's a super saturation, and it's a constant noise. Noise that says, buy this, try this, taste this, drink this, chew this, drive this, visit this place, shop at that store, eat at that restaurant, follow this person, listen to this, wear this, download this. Your friend's going live, watch it now, share this, hashtag this, retweet this, click this, subscribe to this. Blank spaces are an endangered species. There are just very few blank spaces. Every potential blank space, someone's pouring millions into trying to fill that space. Like they're trying to get into that space because you're not hearing from them or maybe anyone else. So we got to get to that space. And a lot of us don't like that. A lot of us hate that because we skip YouTube ads when we can. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know what I'm saying? Like, dang, hate it. We buzz through commercials when we've recorded something on our DVRs. You know, that's what we do. So companies have to be more creative to adapt and dodge and move to get into that space so that you can hear from them in that quiet space that wasn't taken up previously. Like, I remember years ago, the first time I was pumping gas and I looked up and there was a TV screen in front of me. And I was like, are you flipping kidding me right now? I was so mad. I sprayed it and I lit it on fire. I was like, what is happening right now? This is crazy. I can't believe it. Advertisements, people put advertisements on the wall in front of urinals. Are you kidding me? I can't even have privacy right now. Like, it was okay when it was the sports page, but now in like bars and stuff, it's like advertising wings for $6.99, beer for whatever, you know, like, okay, that's why some of us are standing here right now. It's too much of that, you know? It's like, holy cow, like even at the urinal, there are advertisers who pay to individually stamp at the supermarket eggs, the shells of eggs in a dozen eggs or in 18 eggs. They stamp with an advertisement, each egg. Are you kidding me right now? They're stamping eggs. They're advertisers who, and airlines who sell advertisement spots to the barf bags, the motion sickness bags. They put ads on it. So you're getting sick and you pull out a bag and go, oh, I'm not really feeling good right now. You'll open up and you're like, oh, travel Listerine. That's a timely ad, okay? You know, but there's just no blank space. It is constantly like, that's nice, good timing for that one. But we live in the center of a noise bubble. It is constant. You know, let me illustrate this. This is what it's like. This is what our lives often sound like. There's a baby crying, there's a dog barking, our phone keeps going off, we're trying to listen to a podcast in the background. There might be some Outcast thumping. There's the Outcast, you notice the Outcast right there? Yeah, there's all this stuff. Someone's whistling, you know, in the next cubicle. Will you stop whistling? The whistling is driving me nuts right now, but I can't mute it. It's going on and on. But if you peel back like those layers of noise, one at a time.
He makes me lie down in green pastures.
Sometimes there's stuff
He leads me beside quiet waters.
that's been there the whole time.
He restores my soul.
There's voices that we
He
could
guides me
hear
in paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
that were there the whole time, but there's so much noise, you can't even hear God's voice in the midst of it. You can't even hear God's word in the midst. You can't hear God's encouragement, God's direction, because there's just so much going on and competing for that space. That's why a Christian physician who wrote another one of the Gospels, the life and teachings of Jesus, a guy named Luke, felt like it was so important to record this observation. This wasn't just a one-time or two thing. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. He would often go away to a place of solitude, a place of silence or refuge. He would get away because even back in the first century near the Sea of Galilee, there was no broadcasting, but there was a noise bubble. Voices and voices and voices and people with demands. The earth is and has always been a noise bubble. You know, Cirrus Research, a company in the UK, they produce noise measurement instruments. And they put out a top 10 list of the quietest places on earth. These are sanctuaries of silence in the midst of the noise bubble. And I'm going to count them down from 10 to 1. Number 10 is this place in Mexico that's like this underground cave system. 7,000 caves. It's just one of those places, unspoiled. so quiet that at the most, every once in a while, you might hear some water dripping. Number 9 is a place that you might find familiar, Antarctica. There's not much going on in Antarctica. It's hard to find a party. And so not many neighbors who won't turn down stuff, not many phones going off, not many people whistling. Okay? And it's quiet in Antarctica. Number 8 is in Botswana. It's a specific place in Botswana. And it's just this beautiful, like, oh man, that looks so quiet, so calming. Surprisingly, number 7 is a city, and it is Zurich, Switzerland. They say of the cities, like a low noise city is hard to find, but Zurich is your best bet. And then there's a place that I will never be able to pronounce that's in Iceland. There's like 26 letters in the name of this place. But it's so beautiful. In Iceland, in the words of Liz Lemon, I want to go to there. And it's just beautiful. There's like this tiny little SUV moving along down there, and everyone around, it's like, shh, shut your SUV up, you know? And so it's like so beautiful and quiet. Then there's a place in England called Calder Myers, and it's just this beautiful, beautiful place, quiet, water, gorgeous. Now, our top 4 are in the States, and remember, this is written by people in the UK, and they say that the 4 quietest places on earth are in the United States. Number 4 is the Kelso Dunes in the Mojave Desert. So quiet. Number 3, the Olympic National Park in Washington. Oh man, there were so many gorgeous pictures. I just had to pick one, but there was so many gorgeous pictures. And then number 2, Orfield Laboratories in Minnesota. We're indoors now. Like, this is one of those spaces created to eliminate noise. And it used to be number 1 on Guinness's list of the quietest places on earth. People could only go there for about 20 minutes before they'd start to be insane by the silence, you know? Like, I don't know if I could take, all I can hear is things going on in my body. Like, that's the only thing you can hear in that room. And then it was beaten out by number 1, which is called, I mean, it's just a romantic name, Building 87. It's in Washington State also, but this is the one that took over, and it's on Guinness's list as the number 1 quietest place, and they call it's where sound goes to die. Microsoft created it as a research lab, and the room is insulated. Exterior sounds can't get in. Interior sounds don't echo or reverberate. They just die in there. Now, personally, that's not what I'm looking for. Okay? Like, I like the sound of birds singing or a babbling brook or waves hitting the shore or occasional woodpecker. Not a constant woodpecker, but an occasional woodpecker. But the point of this top 10 list is just to say this. At the center of the noise bubble, we have no excuse. There are still places that we can find this quiet and solitude that we can retreat to. They're all around us. They're in the city, and they're in the wilderness. They're near water, and they're away from water in the desert. They're indoors and outdoors. They're in warm weather cities and cold weather cities. We have no excuse. In the midst of the noise bubble, we can find refuge. We can find these quiet places, these solitary places. So my point is this: you have to find or create your refuge with the Father. You have to find or create that environment where you can go hear from the Father. Psalm 23, speaking of finding it, like maybe it's out there and you just have to go find it. Psalm 23 says, the Lord is my shepherd. He's my leader. He cares for me. He's my friend. He loves me. He has my best interest in mind. And I lack nothing because of that. But he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes, he restores my soul. And so, man, that could be Bedford Reservation. That could be Brecksville Reservation. That could be Lake Erie. That could be somewhere in Holmes County, you know, someone churning butter next door. That could be Amish country. It could be somewhere that you go discover it where you connect and say, this is a refuge for me, away from the noise. In the midst of the noise bubble, I have found a refuge from the noise. Many of you know I've mentioned it about 3 or 4 times a year. I go on a prayer retreat. My gracious wife lets me go. Usually it's 3 days, 2 nights. And I go to Toledo just because that's where I grew up. And, you know, it feels like that line between the spiritual world and the physical world is thinner there for me because that's where I first started learning God's word and, just grew up there. And so I go find paths and parks and woods, and I go walk, and I barely talk to anyone. I might meet up once with someone for lunch that I knew back in the day, or I'll hit the trails, I'll talk to God. I pray for my family. I pray for Momentum. I pray for specific people at Momentum who I know are going through it right now. I pray for the elders or the staff, and I do therapy sessions with God. Like stuff that I'm going through, stuff that's bombarding my mind, pressures that I feel. I just pour it all to God as I walk, and it's like I'm on a couch that's moving along a path, just talking to God like, so here's what's going on now in my life, God. It's like he's my therapist, and I talk it out with him. And the other really important thing that I do is at meal times, I eat spicy Mexican food and spicy Thai food, because my wife doesn't have to sleep in the same room as me. So I just go do what I want to do, but it's just, it's so little talking, except I talk out loud to God like a crazy person walking along this path. And I have certain trails that I love that I know I'm going to go to this trail at least once while I'm there. And then I always kind of like shop around and find a new trail. Like, ooh, that new trail is really cool. And so this is one trail that I go to usually when I first roll up into Toledo. I go straight to this spot. There are 2 parking spots. No one knows about this preserve. I've never seen another person on it. 2 parking spaces, and I often film at the same spot where there's like an extra half-mile loop you can kind of go off on a tangent to. And I go every season. And I go when it's winter, I go when it's fall, I go when it's spring, I go when it's summer, and I have to put on bug repellent. And I walk through there slowly for about a 3-mile trail, and I just talk to God. And it is, it's a place that I escape to. I love that place. And I have some places locally that I do that I love to go, but they're a secret because I don't want to see you there. It's just like, I don't want to be around you. This is the point. Like, what are you doing out here? There's a point to me being out here, guys. I needed to be away from even people I love just so I can hear the Father. This weekend we had the men's camping trip. And it's a short thing. It's Friday and it's Saturday. And this year it was planned by Justin Hengel, Mike Love, Rob Clausen, Andrew Bachna, and Jeremy Speth. And I want to thank those guys for planning it. You guys rock. And it was a good bounce back from the pandemic one. Usually they're even larger, but I thought, man, for the amount of people that we had for coming off the pandemic, it was awesome. And I also want to shout out Trina Lindsley. She doesn't come to the men's retreat. That'd be weird. But she makes breakfast burritos every year that she sends along with the guys, and it's a hit every Saturday morning. Dudes get up eating, two like double-fisted burritos, man. Like, how many are those for each of us? 2. Just looking around, hoping somebody gets up late or doesn't eat one. Like, all right, I might get 3, shoving people out of the way. But man, it's just such a great time to go out and be in the woods. Now, in this case, you're with people, but man, just to be in these quieter places away from the video game you might turn to, or the music, the podcast, away from responsibilities for a little while, and just kind of disconnect a little bit and talk with guys about Jesus, and talk with guys about stupid stuff, and laugh, and be in small groups together, and go to bed at night and be like, I didn't know frogs could be that loud. Like just that kind of stuff, and to go to this tree that I've deemed as the urinal, and there's no ad, on it. There's no ad in front of it at all. And so it's beautiful. And that's why I had the students come up. Usually we'll have the students come up after the service or at the end to pray for them. But I kind of wanted them to come up first just to say that's where the students are heading into. Campus community, but there's a way to connect with God when all this extra noise is kind of cut off. And it's going to be noisy. Like the music, they're going to bring a joyful noise in the music. It's going to be incredible. So much time to play volleyball, to swim, to get blobbed into the water, like all this stuff. But there's also space built in for quiet. And Lauren Love, our student ministry director, said when she was in high school, as much of an extrovert as she was, she said, man, I wasn't prepared for how powerful it would be that they worked into the schedule quiet time to get away from people, to go by yourself and spend time in God's Word. And those were some of the most powerful times to me at camp. Where the things I really remember are this person, I found a Christian boyfriend or girlfriend, and we worshiped, and it was incredible. God called me to do this with my life. I got baptized, whatever. But man, I remember those times. It was just me and the Father spending time with God. And that's my prayer for our students this week, that they'll get a chance to take advantage of some of the noise being reduced, a noise reduction week where they can be like, man, I heard from God this week. He told me how much he loved me. He reminded me of the cost of his love for me, that he paid the price for my sins on the cross. Pastor Timothy Keller says, because the world is so full of ugly things, I must find time to rest and feed my soul with beauty. You got to find a way to go feed yourself on beauty and to listen for the Father's voice. So you have to find that refuge. But for others, I'll admit, you have to create that refuge. And it is tough for some people in your stage of life, in your location. It's a challenge. It really can be a challenge. And so you have to create that space. Daniel, who's a godly person who's recorded in the Old Testament scripture, it says that he prayed in his home near the windows. He went home to his upstairs room where the windows were open toward Jerusalem. And 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to his God. Indoors, he found his solitude place. And he's just like, when you get near a window, pray toward Jerusalem. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus taught, when you pray, go into your room, indoors again. Close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen. Now that word for room, it could be like a storehouse in a house, or it could just be an inner room in a house, or it could have been a bedroom. Christians have traditionally, because of the King James Version, talked about this being your prayer closet. And the idea is funny, is that Jesus and the people he was speaking to, most of them wouldn't have even had a home that would have had an inner room. Most of them wouldn't have been able to afford homes at that time that had inner rooms. So I take his meaning to be a little bit more metaphorical here. Just saying, you have to find a place where you can close the metaphorical door. You got to be able to close the door and like Ace Ventura, be like, this is double proof, sound playing glass. You're like, you got to close the door, shut out the noise, and be like, this is my quiet space. This is where I'm going to be. And it means metaphorically, it's someplace quiet, private, hidden, secret, distraction-free. Cut out some noise so you can focus on the unseen Father, Jesus says. So if you're a mom with little ones, man, this is so difficult. Like, I really feel for you trying to find space because you're like Jesus in Capernaum. Everyone has a need. Everyone wants your attention, even your husband. You know, it's like, okay. I am always doing something. And you're like, Jesus, I got to find the space or create the space. And it might be indoors. You know, it may have to be the quiet of the morning or the quiet of the kids going to bed in late evening. Anytime you can steal, you have to do that. Now kids are out of school. And that's an awesome thing, but it means it's a new season where it might even be more difficult to find that space or create that space in your home. Years ago, Shannon read a book, my wife, called The Fresh Brewed Life. And it was really, she said, this wasn't an awesome book, to be honest, but it was the book I needed at that time. And it taught me how to create environments where I could meet with God, like specifically indoors. Like if you set up, that's the chair that I'm going to sit in when I meet with God. And this is the environment I'm going to create around that chair. And this is where, when I sit in that chair, I know it's time to meet with God. And I create that environment, that space. Megan Herman at Momentum, she sits down and has a candle that she lights sometimes when it's time to spend time with God. Leah Peterson, in one of her old homes, she used to literally go into a closet. Moms, you know what she's talking about. Like, I will go in a closet, close the door, and she would pray in that closet. And it wasn't an MTV Cribs closet. Like, I just walk around here. It's like, this is my closet. Here are my shoes. Let's go to my shirt closet. No, it was, sorry about that. It was just a closet. She closed the door, and that was her space. So you got to create that space. Go into dark mode. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb. Find a space in the morning when no one else is up where he says, be still and know that I am God. Just be still. Get away from the noise and the pressures. You need that time to heal and to connect. Let me just end with this point. I live in a planet where we're the center of a noise bubble. So as much as possible, my life state and my life situation, as much as my life state will allow it, my life situation will allow it, I have to fight for unhurried time with Jesus. And it's true, I have to fight for it. I have to create it. I have to go find it. I have to fight for unhurried time with Jesus. A place where I can put the phone away and silence it. And if I need to, I can think, I can praise, I can sing, I can express gratitude, I can cry, I can laugh. I can write down my thoughts. I can note things that I think God's telling me in this moment. And I just spend unhurried time with Jesus. At the center of the noise bubble, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. And I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Let's pray.